Hello, CRES students. This is Sam Zakarian again, one of the instructors for the course. We're going to do chapter 3 today. We're using a 10th edition. We're going to start off on page 36. Again, if I ask you to highlight or put an X by something, please do. Those are important. Anything I write down, I will write down too. If you have any questions, you can always contact the school. Now, on page 36, actually, we're going to go towards the bottom where it says the comprehensive municipality plan. It says local governments, municipalities, and counties establish development goals by creating a comprehensive plan. This is also called the master plan, and it's a guide for planning change in a community. Now, let's go to page 37 right now. About the middle of the page where it says zoning. Zoning is a regulatory tool that helps communities regulate and control how land is used. And it limits the most important thing, it limits the types of business in a given area. Now, highlight put X by the next paragraph. Zoning ordinances are local laws. See, if the comprehensive plan is the big picture, zoning makes up all the details of it. Remember that you can highlight that next paragraph. There's no nationwide zoning law. Cities, communities have their own zoning laws. If the community is way too small to have their own zoning, they generally will use the state law, but there's no national zoning law. Now, the next section, it says zoning matters affect things as, and you can highlight these bullets here. Permitted uses of each parcel of property, lot sizes, type of structures, building heights, setbacks, style and appearance, density, and protection of natural resources. Let's go to page 38 right now. This says land is divided up into different zones. That's at the very top. You got to highlight that, highlight those bullets. The different zones are commercial, residential, agricultural, manufacturing, and business zoning. Now, like a couple lines down where it says a plan unit development. Now, a plan unit development that's done by communities is where they take some land and they put some thought into planning what they're going to build there, whether it's businesses, whether it's housing, whether it's a cultural center. So that's what a PUD is. They call it a PUD, a plan unit development. They're building a new subdivision. They open some land. There'll be a plan unit development. Now, many times, communities have very good plan unit developments. Not always. Sometimes they have ones that are not as good. They did not plan them out very well. Now, let's talk about zoning ordinances. They classified land use into, you can put X's by these. We were mentioning these in a chapter 1, but there's residential. Now, residential, talking about single family homes, townhomes, condos, and 2, 3, and 4 units, as long as they're owner occupied, is considered residential. The next one is agricultural, which is farms and ranches. The next one is commercial, which is shopping centers, office building, apartment buildings, 5+ unit apartment buildings. And then the next one is industrial, which is factories and warehouses. And there's one more I like to add to it. It's called special purpose properties. These are properties that don't fit in these 4 categories. I'm talking about any type of government buildings, schools, libraries, police stations, firehouses, courthouses, would also include stadiums, any house of worship, temples, mosques, churches, would also include a cemetery. So anything that doesn't fit in these 4 categories is considered special purpose. By the way, your license that you're going for, the broker's license, allows you to sell any type of real estate, farmland, commercial, residential, special purpose property. You must work for a sponsoring broker. So, next, the next paragraph, 4-line paragraph starts off with some municipalities also use a buffer zone. Now, a buffer zone is a piece of land that's used to separate 2 incompatible zoning districts. That's what a buffer zone is. Let me give you an example. Let me use my whiteboard here, give you an example of what it is. Give me a minute till it comes up. Now, let's say a community, a village or city set aside this big parcel of land to be developed. Now, what they would do on this end over here, they would set this up as residential property, single family homes mostly. All the way on this end, they would set this up for industrial property. In between, we're going to have a buffer zone. You might go from residential over here to maybe business zoning. Then next will be commercial. And then industrial, because you don't want factories right next to houses. So a buffer zone is a piece of land or zone that's used to separate two incompatible zoning districts. That's what a buffer zone is. Now, let's go on to page 39. About the middle where it says zoning permits. When someone builds something, they have to apply for a zoning permit. They want to make sure that they are in full compliance with the zoning laws, so that if you build something without a permit, they're going to make you tear it down. 2 paragraphs down, make sure you put an X by this non-conforming use. Highlight those next 2 paragraphs, non-conforming use. Now, and put X by them. Non-conforming use is list a building, a business been in existence for a while, and then the zoning law has changed, making that type of business illegal to operate. But since they existed before the law was changed, they're allowed to continue to operate their business. Let me give you an example. In the city of Chicago, about 10, 12 years ago, they passed a law. You cannot have a bar or a tavern in a residential neighborhood. It's against the law now in Chicago. But it's unconstitutional to shut those businesses down that are already existing. So they are considered non-conforming. They are allowed to continue to operate based on 3 conditions. Number one, if they want to remodel, they could, as long as they don't add any square footage. If it was destroyed by fire, 50% or more destroyed by fire, they can't rebuild the bar business. They could build a home there. And if they've been shut down for a certain length of time, they're not allowed to reopen. So non-conforming means you own a business. Law has changed, making that particular business illegal to operate in that area. But since you existed before the law was passed, you've been grandfathered in, and you're allowed to continue to operate your business. Now, let's, at the very bottom of this page 39, they talk about conditional use permit. So I like you to highlight and put an X on page 40 on the very first paragraph, conditional use permit. Now, conditional use permit is allowing a business to open up in an area that's not zoned for it. Let's say that, well, I'll tell you this, the city of Chicago does allow a daycare center to open up in a residential neighborhood. They're very limited to having something like only like 4 children at the most. The reason why it's just more convenient for the parents to have a daycare center in a neighborhood, because a daycare center is a business. They need a business license, but they do allow that in Chicago. It's safer for the children to be in a residential neighborhood as well. So that's a conditional use permit, allowing a business to open up in an area that's not zoned for it. Highlight, put an X by the very next paragraph. A variance. A variance means you exceed the current zoning law or deviate from the current zoning law. You need a variance. Now, let's say, here, I'll draw it up for you. I'll give you this example. I'm just trying to get a clear screen. Okay, let me see if trouble here. On that board. Let me get another board. Let me clear up my board. Okay. Be with me in a second. I'll give you an example. Seen something like this on a state exam as well. All right, let's say, for example, the city of Chicago passed a new law. No building could be higher than 100 feet high. See, that's a new ordinance in the city of Chicago. Well, you want to build a building that's going to be 140 feet high. In order to exceed the current zoning laws or deviate from the current zoning laws, you need a variance. To exceed the current zoning laws or deviate from the current zoning laws, you need a variance. Now, skip down 2 paragraphs where it says building codes, highlight, put an X by that. Now, building codes enforced by the city or village is to make sure they have minimum standards in construction material and labor material, labor provided, because they don't want a building to be going up and then maybe the first storm comes in and it collapses. So that's why they have that. Now, highlight, put X by the next paragraph, building permits. In order to build anything in any city or village or anywhere else in the country, you need to apply for a building permit to make sure you are in full compliance with the building codes and the zoning permits. That's why they require you to do that. If you build something without a building permit, they'll make you tear it all down, start all over again. Now, the very bottom, last 2 lines on page 40, you can highlight that. A subdivider now, a subdivider is a person that divides up the land into individual home sites. Now on page 41, highlight that first paragraph. A developer is the one that puts the buildings on it. So subdivider divides up the land. The developer is the one that puts up the houses or the buildings on it. But generally, your subdivider and your developer is the same person. Let's go on to page 42 right now. Second paragraph, CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. We talked about that in chapter 2, the CC&Rs. When you subdivisions have them, condo buildings have them. These are rules that everyone must follow to make sure to maintain the value of the property. That's the main reason, and for safety as well. So now I want to talk about, skip down about 3 paragraphs. It's a 2-line paragraph right in the middle of page 42. Private land use controls may be more restrictive than the owner's use than a local zoning ordinance. The rule is the more restrictive of the 2 takes precedent. Now, okay, you have this lot right here, and you want to build a home. Now, the owner of the property has put a side yard setback of 10 feet on each side, 10 feet. You cannot build within 10 feet of the side yard. That's the owner's restriction. The city imposed a 20-foot setback, side yard setback. Now, since the city is more restrictive, you must follow the city's restriction. Let's say the city has a front yard. You cannot build within the first 25 feet of the property line, but the owner imposes a 40-foot setback. Now, the owner is more restrictive. Now you have to follow the owner. So, let me say this to you. As far as restrictions are concerned, whichever restriction is more restrictive, that's the restriction you follow. So if the city's more restrictive than the owner, you follow the city. If the owner's more restrictive than the city, you follow the owners. So whichever restriction is more restrictive, that's the restriction you follow. I hope you follow me on that one. Now, the last paragraph, very important. This is called the Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. This is a federal law that states that anyone that buys vacant land located outside their own state, they have to give them a property report when the property's sold. Let me can't do this. All right, let me get another chalkboard. Clear one. All right, hello. All right. This is called the Interstate Federal Interstate. This is definitely going to be on a state exam, by the way, without fail. Interstate Land Sales Registration Act. Now, this only applies to vacant land purchase out of your own state, out of your own state. Does not apply if you're buying a house in state or out of state, vacant land out of your own state. Now, Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. If you buy vacant land outside of your own state, you must get a property report at the signing of the contract. They must provide a property report. Now, if they provide the property report, and I'm going to explain in a moment what's going to be on the property report. Let me write this down. I'll tell you in a moment what's on the property report. Now, if they give you the property report at the time of the signing of the contract, at signing, buyer has 7 days to cancel. The contract. 7 days to cancel. I'm going to explain why in a moment. If they give you the property report. Now, if you don't get the property report at the signing of the contract, no report, buyer has 2 years to cancel the contract. This is a federal law. Let me tell you why this law came about. There was people kind of taking advantage of a lot of people. What would happen? This happened to something like over 50,000 people. People from Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. You know, as people get older, it seems like the winters take a lot longer to get done or something. They get cabin fever. Holidays are over. Super Bowl's over. All that's over with. And what happens? They all of a sudden a commercial will show up in mid-February, and they say, here we are somewhere in Florida, 75 degrees, and they show people fishing and boating and golfing and jet skiing and swimming and everything else. They says, you know what? You can live in this paradise right here. Give us $5,000 down and $500 a month for the next 5 years. Buy this half-acre land. Over 50,000 people bought the property, the land. They thought they're going to live there, except that it's located in a swamp in Florida. You can't build anything on it. So that's why this is a federal law. Interstate Land Sales Full Registration Act, Full Sales Registration Act, states that if someone buys vacant land located outside their state, they must get a property report at the signing of the contract. Now, if they do get the property report at the signing of the contract, they have 7 days to cancel and get all their money back. they don't get the report, I misspelled over here, sorry. They don't get the report, they have 2 years to cancel. What's going to be on the report? The report's going to show if there's any liens on the property. They're going to show what the zoning is on the property. What you're allowed to build on that property. It's going to show you if there's any restrictions on the property. That all has to be on the property report. And they're going to show you if there's a percolation test. I want to talk about this right now. Percolation test. Now, in the city of Chicago, we have public sewer system. So when people flush their toilets, they wash their clothes, all that wastewater goes in the public sewer system and it gets treated. Now, in the country, in the farmland, they don't have public sewer system. Instead, what they have is something called a septic tank. Now, a septic tank, what it is, it's a big concrete box. Probably, I'm guessing, around 12 feet by 12 feet, about 3 or 4 feet deep. They bury this big box in the yard someplace. You can't see it, it's buried. Every time that household flushes their toilet, washes their clothes, all that wastewater goes into this tank. And there's pipes that stick out of it. You can't see it, it's all underground. And the water drains from there. Now, where they locate the septic tank, they have to do a percolation test because the water can't drain too fast or too slow. It's not good for the environment. So that's what a septic tank is. And that's the purpose of a percolation test, is to determine where they're going to locate the septic tank. Now, when you buy a home, they don't have public sewer systems. They have a septic tank system when you buy a home. They have to, the homeowner has to have it's called a well and septic tank test on it to make sure they're in working order. Well water and septic tank. Now, I've seen this on a state exam, and you probably see it too. Percolation test, not required in the city of Chicago, not required in the city of Chicago. So why we have public sewer system. So on page 42, highlight, put an X by the last paragraph. You can highlight, put an X by number 1 and 2. I want you to also, on page 43, about, it's the second paragraph, right after the first set of bullets, where it says right of rescission, highlight, put an X by that. It's just what I told you earlier, what I wrote down. If someone buys vacant land located outside their state, they must get a property report at the signing of the contract. If they get the property report, they have 7 days to cancel the contract and get their money back. If they don't get the property report, they have 2 years to cancel. Again, this is only vacant land, not a house out of state, not vacant land in your state, out of your state. And I think, well, actually, the last paragraph, you can highlight, put an X by that. It kind of repeats everything that we said. So you can highlight, put an X by that one. And that is the end of chapter 3. So don't forget to continue to do the chapter quizzes to qualify for the state exam. You got to take all the classes. You have to complete the chapter quizzes in order to take the state exam, to qualify to take the state exam. Okay, well, this is Sam Zakarian again. I'm wishing everyone good luck, study hard, go over everything that we told you, and I'll see you on the next chapter. Thank you very much.